Welcome to this presentation titled Prosody distinguishes Estonian verb second from Finnish and Swedish. I am Heete Sahkai from the Institute of the Estonian Language, and my co-authors are Anders Holmberg from Newcastle University and Tamm from Karoli University in Budapest. First of all, a short explanation of what verb second is and how it is represented in Estonian. Verb second, or for short V2, is a rule whereby the finite verb is always the second constituent in the sentence. In particular, Germanic languages are known for following this rule, with the exception of modern English. Examples 1 to 5 illustrate how the verb second rule works in the Germanic language Swedish. Please note that the finite verb is signaled with red color and underlining, and the blue color signals the subject. Also, we use small flags to highlight which languages are being discussed in each slide, as we will be discussing 3 languages, Estonian, Swedish, and Finnish. Here, the examples show that in Swedish, it doesn't matter whether the initial constituent is the subject, the object, the negation particle, a WH phrase, or a frame element. The finite verb always comes second. And the examples also show that in the unmarked case, the subject precedes the finite verb in Swedish, as in the first sentence, but when another constituent is fronted, the order of the subject and the verb is inverted, as in all the other examples. Estonian is a non-Germanic and non-Indo-European language. It belongs to the Finno-Ugric branch of the Uralic language family. But untypically for Uralic languages, Estonian declarative main clauses also follow the verb second rule. Example 1 illustrates that in the unmarked case, the first constituent of the clause is the subject, as in Swedish. Mari küpsetab pühapäeviti tavaliselt kooki. Literally, Mary bakes on Sundays, usually cakes, meaning Mary usually bakes cakes on Sundays. If another constituent is fronted, the order of the subject and the verb is inverted, and the verb still remains the second constituent, as in example 2. Pühapäeviti küpsetab Mari tavaliselt kooki. Literally, on Sundays bakes Mary usually cakes, meaning on Sundays Mary usually bakes cakes. It has been found that in written language, the inversion of the order of the subject and the verb takes place in 90% of the clauses with a fronted non-subject constituent. Here are a few more examples of V2 in Estonian, but I will go straight to the exceptions to the V2 order in Estonian declarative main clauses. We will concentrate on 2 of these exceptions, both of which have been described in terms of prosody. The first exception is that prosodically weak pronouns allow verb third order, especially in spoken language. This is illustrated in example 1. Pühapäeviti ta küpsetab tavaliselt kooki. Literally, on Sundays she bakes usually cakes, meaning on Sundays she usually bakes cakes. The second exception concerns the placement of the finite verb. When the finite verb receives a nuclear accent, it tends to occur later in the clause. This is illustrated in example 2. Pühapäeviti Mari tavaliselt küpsetab midagi. Literally, on Sundays Mary usually bakes something. These exceptions distinguish Estonian clearly from the Germanic verb second languages. For instance, in Swedish, there are basically no exceptions to V2 order in main clauses. It makes no difference whether the subject is a pronoun or a lexical phrase, or whether it is light or heavy. Likewise, the prosody of the verb makes no difference in Swedish. In this presentation, we will claim that the left periphery of the Estonian clause is indeed quite distinct from that of Swedish. Instead, we propose that it is very similar to the clausal left periphery of Finnish, a language closely related to Estonian, as both belong to the Finnic subgroup of Finno-Ugric languages, but Finnish is not a verb second language. We propose that the Estonian V2 rule and the exceptions to it result from two prosodic conditions, and these prosodic conditions affect the spellout of movement chains. First, we assume the following analysis of the Swedish left periphery, which we have simplified a bit. The Swedish left periphery consists of the projection of the finiteness head of Finn. Finn has a feature which attracts a verb. Secondly, it has an APP feature which attracts any maximal projection to the specifier of Finn P. The V2 order is explained by the fact that there can be no movement past this position. This figure illustrates our analysis of the left periphery of the Estonian and Finnish clause with the help of a verb third sentence. The analysis is based on a long-standing tradition of analyzing the Finnish left periphery. According to the analysis, there are two projections in the left periphery, which can be termed finiteness phrase and operator phrase. The finite verb moves to the finiteness head. The subject moves to the specifier of the finiteness phrase, and a further constituent can move to the specifier of the higher operator phrase. To summarize, in Swedish, a single constituent can move to the left periphery, while in Finnish and Estonian, two constituents can move there. However, Estonian, unlike Finnish, allows the verb third order only when the second preverbal constituent is a weak pronoun. So how do we explain the verb second effect with full DPs? We propose that in a V2 clause, the verb still moves to Finn, and the subject still moves to the specifier of Finn P. The movement of the subject creates a chain of copies. In the unmarked case, the highest copy is spelled out. But when the specifier of the operator phrase is also filled, the spellout of the highest copy is blocked. Instead, a lower copy gets spelled out. We do not have time to present our arguments for this analysis in this presentation, but you can find them in the full paper in sections 3.1 to 3.4. Here we go straight to the next question. What is it that blocks the spellout of the higher copy of the DP subject, and why doesn't it apply to weak pronouns? Given that the condition behind the V2 order affects full DPs but not weak pronouns, we propose that the condition is prosodic in nature. What distinguishes weak pronouns from full DPs prosodically is that they do not affect prosodic phrasing. We therefore hypothesize that the spellout of the highest copy of the subject is blocked by a condition on prosodic phrasing. We assume a recursive prosodic structure along the lines of Selkirk 2011, as well as her match constraints. The match constraints match syntactic clauses to the so-called iota domains and syntactic maximal projections to the so-called phi domains. We propose the following formulation of the condition behind the V2 effect. The iota domain, corresponding to a clause, contains at most two highest level phi domains. Indeed, the Estonian V2 clauses can be taken to correspond to at most two highest level phi domains. The preverbal constituent, if present, constitutes one phi domain, unless it is a weak pronoun, and the rest of the clause constitutes a second phi domain. This is supported by the accentuation facts of Estonian all-new clauses. The accentuation facts suggest two things. First, that the finite verb is phrased together with its complement, including across intervening constituents, which are prosodically embedded. This is suggested by the fact that the finite verb with a complement is de-accented, independently of whether the verb and the complement are adjacent or not. This is illustrated in this figure. Secondly, the accentuation fact suggests that adjuncts are phrased together with a preceding verb phrase. This is evidenced by the fact that clause final adjuncts are deaccented and thus presumably do not correspond to a phi domain on their own. The deaccentuation of clause final adjuncts is illustrated in this figure. Consequently, we propose that V2 clauses, as well as verb third clauses with a weak pronominal subject, correspond to prosodic condition 1. This is illustrated in examples 1 to 3. For subject initial V2 clauses, for non-subject initial V2 clauses, and for V3 clauses with a weak pronominal subject. In all these cases, the clause is expected to correspond to at most two highest level phi domains. However, this is not the case in verb third clauses with a full DP subject, as in 4. Such clauses are predicted to have a more articulated structure as the highest level of phi phrasing. To summarize, we propose that Estonian V2 results from a constraint on the number of highest level phi domains. This constraint blocks the spellout of the highest copy of a DP subject and causes a lower copy to be spelled out. As was mentioned in the beginning, there is a second prosody-related exception to Estonian V2. This exception concerns the placement of the finite verb. When the finite verb receives a nuclear accent, it tends to appear lower in the clause. We propose that this exception results from a second prosodic condition that also affects the spellout of the copies in a movement chain, created this time by verb movement to fin. Given that this condition applies only when the finite verb receives a nuclear accent, it is likely that it is a condition on the placement of the nuclear accent, that is, the head of the iota domain. We therefore hypothesize that the relevant prosodic constraint concerns the headedness of the iota domain. We propose the following formulation of the second condition. The head of the iota domain is preferably near its right edge. The effect of the second prosodic condition is illustrated in this figure using the sentence Mari tavaliselt küpsetab midagi. Mary usually bakes something. The finiteness head and the tense head copy the features of the verb, which results in a chain of verb copies. In the unmarked case, only the highest copy is spelled out. However, if the finite verb receives a nuclear accent, spelling it out in fin or t would violate the prosodic constraint. Therefore, the spellout of these copies is blocked. Instead, a lower copy gets spelled out. In conclusion, we have proposed the following. The Estonian V2 order differs from that of Swedish and the other Germanic languages. In Estonian, as well as in Finnish, two constituents can move to the left periphery, while in Swedish, a single constituent can move there. The V2 order of Estonian, as well as the two exceptions to it, result from two prosodic conditions, and these prosodic conditions affect the spellout of movement chains. However, more study is needed in future to substantiate these proposals, as the prosodic structure of Estonian above the level of the word has been very little studied so far. Thank you very much for your attention, and please contact us at these email addresses.